So a guy pulls away from you. He goes hot, cold, hot, cold. He's all over the place. He's here, he's there. He comes in, he leaves, and you're not sure what to do about it. Why is he pulling away? What can you do? Can you stop him from pulling away? And the short answer is yes, you absolutely can do things that will stop him from pulling away, depending on why he's pulling away. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hello, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to Commitment Connection. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about how to get a guy to stop, how to keep him from pulling away from you if he's doing that, or if you're afraid that he might do that in the future. And so there are 7 different things here that you're going to want to do, and they go in order from inner to positioning to communication. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to detach yourself from him. So you need to make what he's doing less important. So one of the biggest reasons why we end up getting stressed out about things in our lives, anything in our life, is because we usually take small things and we blow them up to being really, really important. And so if you're making something really, really important, like what this guy is doing, and is he talking to me, and did he text me, and when's he going to text me next, and what's he doing, right? If it's all about him and what he's doing, then you're going to blow it up. You're going to make it really big, and it might not even be something that's big. And so what you want to do first is detach yourself from him. Researchers have done a lot of studying on this, and they found that when two people are together with each other and one person thinks about that person a lot, and they dream about that person, and they think about this future that maybe they're going to have together, what ends up happening is that you feel like your identities mold together. And so what you need to do is refocus on building your own personal identity. If you don't already have one already, what you want to do is you want to solidify things, do things that solidify your sense of personal identity. So those are things like working on different passions that you have, getting involved in hobbies that you have, or work that you have that you really like, doing things that you do that you know is like about you, right? It's who you are, right? Maybe you're into listening to music, maybe you're into going out to wineries, maybe you're into, I don't know, skateboarding or something. I have no idea what you're into, but whatever you're into, what you want to do is figure out that and start spending more time doing that. That way it's not all about him. It's not all about what he's doing, and you can minimize and lower his whatever he's doing in his sense of importance. And the reason that you want to do this is something that we're going to be talking about a little later, right? You might be thinking to yourself, like, yeah, but Matt, I'm not trying to make him less important. I want him to stop pulling away. Well, it's very important that you refocus and you detach yourself from him in order to do this most effectively. And you'll hear why that is here in a minute. So number 2 is you want to replace the attachment that you have with him with other things. So we talked about detaching from him. Well, it's hard to just detach from something or stop doing something. The only way that people effectively change and stopping doing one thing is if they replace that one thing with something else. And so you want to replace what you're doing with him with other things in your life, and most specifically figure out what it is that you're connecting with him on. And usually it's like emotional connection, right? Or love or something like that. Well, you can get that from other places. If that's your main source of connection and love is this guy, what you want to do is start getting connection and love from other things, right? It might be dating other people if you guys aren't in a committed relationship yet. It might be going out into nature and hanging out in nature and just spending time in nature. It might be with pets, right? Having a dog or a cat, or even if you don't want to have a dog or cat, you can always go to like an animal shelter and pet dogs and cats at animal shelters or petting zoos or something like that, depending on what's in your area and what the laws are in your area. You can also get like friends and family, go hang out with friends and family and get connection with friends and family that way, right? So you want to spread out your connection, because if it's all on him, right? If you're getting your emotional needs met through this guy, or kind of the idealization of this guy or the imagination of this guy, what will end up happening is if he pulls away or you pull away or something happens, you're going to be like, oh, I got to get my connection back with him. And so you don't want it to all be about him and whether you're getting the connection through him. And instead you want to diversify. You want to spread out the amount of connection that you're getting from multiple different sources. That way, if you're missing a source of connection, it's not that big of a deal. If you're here with us right now, say hi and tell us where you're from, where you're watching this from in the chat. It's cool to see women from all over the world watching these live streams. So thank you for being here with me today. All right, so number 2 is about taking your power back and giving you more control over your life and how you feel by diversifying your connection. Number 1 was detaching from him. 2 was replacing his attachment and connection with other things. And number 3 is shifting your mindset. So I can't tell you how many times we get women that it's all about this guy, right? And it's about what he's doing and where he's going and how do I get him to do things right? Because you feel something for somebody, and then it's like, that's it, right? I got to make it happen with him because he's it. He's the thing around here. He's my only option. And so what you want to do is shift your mindset. And what you want to do is stop making it about getting him and start making it about getting into the relationship that you want. And if you've been on other videos of mine, you've heard me talk about this before. It's really, really important that you're focusing on the relationship and flipping the frame with him. So it's not about, is he doing the right thing? How do I get him to do the things that I want him to do? How do I get him to be the perfect little man for me and fix him and change him and, adjust him and do all these things to make him right? And instead about, what relationship do I want? And what you do is you shine the light, right? Whenever a guy comes by, what you want to do is shine the light on the relationship. And that's a metaphor if you haven't figured it out, which means that what you want to do is communicate that this is what you're looking for, this is what you want, and then he gets to step up and either be that man or not, right? You're evaluating him. He's on trial. And the question is, will he make the cut or not? Instead of it being, how do I get him to do these things, right? You're flipping it back over and you're saying, is he going to make the cut for this? And he might not, right? Depending on what the pulling away situation is that you have with this guy, it might not be a big deal and it might be a big deal. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later, because there's a lot of confusion in our community with what it means when a guy pulls away and if he's actually pulling away or not. And so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. All right, so number 4 is what you want. This moves over to the communication thing, and this is encouraging his independence. So a man is far less likely to need space if you're encouraging him to take that space ahead of time. So if you're encouraging him, there's kind of a joke out in the men's world where guys kind of, they know when a guy has a girlfriend, because all of a sudden he's not allowed to go and do things. He's not allowed to hang out with his friends. He's not allowed to do his hobbies and all these different things, right? And it's kind of this joke about clingy women who kind of are possessive and try to force a man to do all these different things. And you want to do the exact opposite. A lot of times guys end up pulling away because they end up feeling really overwhelmed with what's going on in the situation. They're changing their life around a lot because they're getting into a dating and relationship situation. And they go, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed because of all this change that's happening. And they feel like they want to pull away, right? And get away and get some space from you. And so if you're encouraging him to continue doing the life that he had before he met you, then it's it's a lot easier for him to not feel like he wants to pull away. It's a lot easier for him to miss you and to appreciate the time that he gets to spend around you because of the scarcity principle. And what will end up happening more likely if you're pushing him away is that he'll want to come back to you, right? Instead of it being this thing where you're latching on to him and he's like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to be here. And he's trying to pull away and he disappears, right? Instead, you're pushing him away and it's like the rubber band effect, right? It's the rubber band effect. You're pushing him away and he's coming back. And so if you're encouraged, like I said, if you're encouraging him to go and hang out with his friends and hobbies and do the things that he normally does and the things that he loves to do, and you're pushing him and encouraging him to do those things, he's less likely to want to pull away. All right, so number 5, and like I said, there's 7 of these things, and we're on number 5 right now. Number 5 is you want to give him space before he needs it, right? Because a man can't pull away if you already pulled away from him, right? All right, that's a little bit of a joke if you didn't get it. And but seriously, if you end up giving him space, right? If you're in a situation and you're like, okay, men need space sometimes. Well, maybe you need some space sometimes. Maybe not. I don't know. It depends on maybe your attachment style, right? If you have an anxious attachment style, maybe you don't need any space and you can never get enough connection and love and attention. Well, and if that's your situation, then you need to scroll back up to number 1 and 2, where we talked about building connection, right? And getting connection, creating more connection with other men, creating more connection with friends and family, creating connection with animals and nature, and creating all that kind of connection. That way you won't be so dependent on him if you're not the kind of person that does need space. And so what you want to do is give him some space. So if you have to schedule it in your planner or whatever you have to do, but give him that space before he needs it, because it's in that space that he'll start to miss you, that he'll start to remember the good times that he's had with you, that he'll want to come back to you, and that he'll appreciate the time that you have together more. And so you want to give him that space before he needs it. If you get what we're talking about here, say I get it in the chat. If you don't get what we're talking about, go ahead and let me know, and we will talk about your questions, whatever questions you have. If you have any questions about anything, go ahead and ask them in the chat. If you just want to talk about life and you're like, I got Matt Coast on the line, let's just talk about life, we can do that too. Whatever you want to talk about, I will answer any questions you have. All right, number 6 is setting a standard for what you want. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about communicating in a high value way in number 7. But one of the ways that you do that is by setting a standard, right? So if a guy let's say that you just start dating a guy, or even if you're in kind of a semi relationship, maybe you're not even sure what's going on, or even if you're in a committed relationship, you can ask this question to a guy in whatever situation you're in, and you'll find out what's going on. So here's what you do. You ask him what he thinks about couples who do X, right? And so X is whatever you want to do, right? So let's say that you like being in contact with a guy every single day, or maybe you don't, but you want to know what he thinks about it. What you do is you say, hey, what do you think about couples who like to text each other every single day? What do you think about that, right? Or what do you think about couples that want to stay in constant communication with each other, like all day, all throughout the day, or what do you think about, couples and, whatever he answers that question, you can also ask the opposite side. Well, what do you think about couples that only connect with each other like once a week, right? And so what you're doing here is you're getting a framework for his blueprint of the world, right? Because he has a blueprint about how relationships are supposed to look based on his friends, his family, the different experiences that he's had in his past, and what he really believes about life and people and relationships in general. And so when you ask him that question, what ends up happening is he starts telling you what this blueprint looks like. And then what you can do is you can start setting standards. And the way that you set a standard is you say things like, I really like it when, or I think it's really attractive when. and then you say whatever it is, right? And you can say it about all kinds of different things, right? If you want a guy to act more like a gentleman or more chivalrous or more noble or whatever, right? You can say, I really like it when guys hold the door for me. It makes me feel like I'm just being taken care of so much, right? Or I really like it when guys act like gentlemen. Like it makes them stand out so much from all the other men that I meet, because guys don't do that kind of stuff anymore. But it's so attractive. It's really hot, right? And when you say that kind of a thing, what you're doing is you're setting a standard for him to chase after, right? You're setting a place for him to go after and a thing for him to start doing. So it's basically challenging him and saying, this is what I want. Are you going to live up to my standards or not? And then he has a decision whether he's going to in the future. Most guys, what they'll do is they'll make a mental note of that, right? And what they'll end up doing is they'll either protest against it if they're a contrarian, or they'll try to live up to that standard if they're really into you and they really want you to like them. And so that's how you set a standard, right? And you want to make sure that you're doing that. So you ask him what he thinks about couples who do X, and then you set a standard for whatever kind of behavior that you want. There's also a way to reinforce positive behaviors that he does, right? So if he does open a door for you, what you can do is just is thank him for it, and then tell him it's really attractive, right? Like if he opens the door for you and you like walk through and you're like, thank you, wow, that's really attractive. Guys rarely, I rarely meet guys that are gentlemen these days, and I just think it's so hot, right? And what you're doing is you're reinforcing positive behaviors that you want him to do more often in the future. And when you tell a guy something like that, when you're like, wow, that was really attractive of you doing that, he'll probably do that in every chance that he gets, right? Because he wants to feel like he's attractive to you, and he wants you to be attracted to him. And so number 7 is you communicate like a high value woman if he does leave. And so there are 3 different ways that you can communicate like a high value woman. There's 3 main ways. There are some other ways that I talk about in some of my other programs and stuff, but there are 3 main ways that you can communicate like a high value woman. A lot of women that I talk to, they want to get like revenge on a guy, right? Like I see this in our community sometimes where women are like, oh, he did that. Well, give him a taste of his own medicine and show him who's boss, right? And you're like, that's a really bad way to go, right? Because what you're doing when you do that, not only is it incredibly low value behavior, but you're also kind of getting yourself into a cycle, right? Where you start kind of this revenge cycle where he starts feeling like you're actually attacking him, because you are, right? Who knows whether he pulled away was malicious or not. We can talk about that here in a minute. But, a lot of women, when you get revenge on a guy, what ends up happening is he'll either try to get revenge back on you, like he'll try to start playing games back on you, or he'll end up leaving. And so instead, what you want to do is communicate in a high value way. And the 3 main ways to do that are 1, setting standards, which is what we just talked about earlier, is you set a standard. Number 2 is you set a boundary. And number 3 is you walk away. That doesn't mean that you can't come back, but it is definitely but you definitely want to walk away in a certain situation, right? And if you're getting to the point, because walking away is kind of like it's like kind of the extreme measure. And if you're in a situation where you're walking away, you want him to earn having you back, right? If you're in a situation where you're so angry or you feel like your boundaries have been crossed over so harshly that you have to walk away, what you do is you make him earn getting you back. You make it, and the way that he earns it is by investing in you, right? One thing that women who work with me know is that a man's investment in you is far more important than your investment in him, because his investment makes him feel attached. It makes him miss you when you're gone. It makes him backwards rationalize in his brain that he's done all this stuff because he really likes you, which puts him in a position where he's far more likely to fall in love, far more likely to feel attached, far more likely to not want to lose you. And so you want him to invest to get you back. And so those are the different ways. And so what questions does everybody have? Lots of people saying hello, hello, hello. Oh, by the way, if you want my entire system for how to get a guy to how to get a guy who loves you and cherishes you and sees you as the beautiful, amazing, awesome woman that you are, and you want a deep dive into all these principles, check out the Forever Woman Formula at theforeverwomanformula.com. You can get that. You can pick, it's free access. You can get my program completely for free. You also get 14 days of free question and answer in our coaching forum. So you can ask our coaches any questions that you have if you sign up for that program. And like I said, you can get the whole thing for free. So that's pretty cool. So you should definitely go check that out. So Diane, sorry for butchering your name, says, hello from England. Matt, your advice is life-changing. Thank you so much for your insight. Well, thank you for being here. It's an honor for me to be here and to serve you. And I'm very, very happy that you find my information and my advice life-changing. Stacy said, I am experiencing this right now. Thanks. I needed to hear exactly this today. Portia says, exactly. I feel you on that. And thank you so much. You are amazing. Your advice helps me all the time. You are the best. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So let's see. What else do we have here? Lots of people watching from all over the world. So cool to see so many people all over the world watching these. Josie says, thanks for all these. I was wondering, I'm hoping you have a good relationship knowing all these. Yep, I certainly do. So French says, that's understandable for a guy to pull away if a woman becomes possessive of him. So one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is the idea of like why guys pull away. Because there's a lot of really bad assumptions out there. There's a woman the other day on my YouTube channel that left a message in the comments where she's like, if a guy pulls away, that means that he's seeing somebody else. And why would you give them any information other than, to get rid of this cheater? And I'm like, that's not true. It's actually a well-studied fact that most guys don't have somebody on the side. A lot of guys, there over 25% of men out there right now are completely celibate, meaning they haven't hooked up, gotten physically intimate with anybody in at least the last 12 months. With women, it's a much smaller percentage. And most guys aren't players, right? They aren't running around dating lots of women. And if the guys that you're dating are players, then that has something to do with those guys, right? And there's a small percentage of guys out there, very, very small percentage of guys who are actually players, who are actually playing around the field, right? And most of them are all on the dating apps. So you'll run into them if you go onto there. But there's a lot of reasons why guys might pull away. And the question is whether, because there's a woman on a live stream a while back where she was like, oh, this guy that I've been talking to, he pulls away every single day. And I was like, how does that make any sense, right? Like, what do you mean by that? And what she clarified, and she's like, well, he pulls away in the evening and then he doesn't start talking to me until the next day. And I'm like, you think maybe he's like going to sleep at night? Right? Like, I mean, people have lives, right? They have different things. And so you need to question whether, if a guy's pulling away from you, whether this is normal behavior or not, right? It's one of those things where if, we live in this weird time where things haven't, just to let you know, maybe you don't know this, or maybe you do, I don't know. but things haven't always been like this, right? We haven't always been able to contact anybody we want to, anywhere in the world, anytime we want to. We haven't had instant communication with everybody. That's a fairly new thing in human society. I know it can feel like it's been like that forever since we've had it for a while, but it used to be that people would like meet, like, they'd meet up like once or twice a week at most, that you had to call somebody. And if they didn't show up, it was like, did they die? What happened to them? You couldn't message them and find out what was going on. And so you want to make sure that what you're doing isn't extreme, right? Because it's really easy to get into extreme behaviors and not realize that you're in an extreme behavior. The magic is always in the middle. And if you're on one side where you're like, oh, I need him. Like there was a woman in our community the other day that was like, a man should communicate, right? If I text him, he should communicate back to me in 30 minutes or less, right? And it's like, really? Like what if he has a job? What if he goes to work and he's focused on work? Do you think he should be, he's in doing whatever he's doing? You think he should be stopping work and contacting you? We need to have better boundaries as people in life, right? And we need to start looking at ourselves and looking at our own behaviors and saying, okay, is my behavior this thing that I have where I'm like feeling like I need to be connected with this person all the time? Is that healthy? Right? And start looking at it instead of the problems with that person out there, but instead looking at, what's actually going on, right? Because if you date one guy after the next guy, after the next guy, after the next guy, and every single guy does the same thing, you might want to start questioning whether it's men or whether it's something that you're doing yourself, right? Because if the problem, I actually heard this from somebody the other day, it was really good. If the problem has nothing to do with you, then the solution can have nothing to do with you either. In other words, if the problem is something external out there, then there's no way that you can fix it. There's no way that you can do anything about it. You just have to blame things that are outside of yourself and hope that it changes at some point, right? Like I get women all the time that'll post things on some of my Facebook posts where they'll be like, oh, men are the problem. You need to be teaching men, and men, don't know how to treat women and all that kind of stuff, which to an extent is true, right? And at the same time, if you're constantly pointing the finger at men, there are literally thousands of men's dating coaches out there, and they're teaching men what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so many of those things might not be what you want men to be taught, because what a lot of times what you think works in terms of making women feel attracted isn't actually what works, right? Like there was this woman that was on one of my posts and she's like, you need to tell men to start respecting women and start treating women, really nice and doing all these things. And I'm like, I get that. And feeling respected by a guy is something that can make women feel attracted, right? However, if you tell a guy that, especially a guy that's been frustrated and lonely and he's getting dating advice, likely the situation is that he's been frustrated for a long time and he's been having a lot of challenges with dating, and telling him that he needs to respect women is going to be a total mismatch for him, and he's going to feel like he can't trust anything you're saying anymore, because what he's probably been doing for a long time is respecting women and getting nowhere with it, right? Because that's usually where a lot of guys come from, is they do the super friendship method, right? Where they hang out with a woman and they're really nice to them and they're really respectful, right? And they don't get anywhere, and the woman ends up dating some a-hole who treats her really badly, and he's like, oh, why do women not like nice guys who respect them, right? And so you can't just tell guys respect women and that's how you get women, because that's not true, right? It's masculinity, right? There's a bit of danger and a bit of dominance and a bit of going after what you want that needs to be there. He has to have a masculine shell in order to be attractive to women. Man, I ran off on a tangent here. In order for him to add respect to kind of his communication style and it be attractive, he has to be surrounded by a masculine shell. And if he's not, then most women aren't going to be attracted to him at all. And so, all right, let's move on. Let's move on to some questions. All right. All right, so let's see what kind of questions we have out here. So thank you everybody for being here. Ivy, Stacy, Deborah. Hello, 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 hello. Josie says, why it's always be on a man's side satisfaction. We want to break too. Right. Not meaning to date someone else, not me, but men, when they take a break, they go for another woman. Not fair, isn't it? Josie, you are talking exactly about what I was talking about earlier, right? There's a whole bunch of different reasons why a guy might need a break that have nothing to do with another woman. And assuming that if a guy needs to pull away or take a break, that it means that he's going to be dating another woman is a really bad assumption to have. It's a really, really harmful assumption for you to have. You shouldn't have that assumption. It's a bad assumption. Right? Because it could be a whole bunch of other things that he needs, right? It could be that he's not getting his needs met from being with you. It could be that he's feeling overwhelmed, or he's feeling too much pressure. He's feeling smothered. So there could be a whole bunch. It could be that he has a bunch of things going on at work. It could be that there's a whole bunch of different things going on, and you can't assume that it's because he's going off to date another person. You can't assume that. That is not always true, and it's probably not mostly true either. So don't think that. That's a bad assumption. So let's see. So Hazel says, can a guy who's used to excused as being avoidant or timid to come across? Can a guy used as an excuse as being, yeah, I mean, if you haven't, so there's something out there, Hazel, called an avoidant attachment style, where avoidant attachment styles will tend to pull back and pull away when things start getting stressful, or they, things are happening that they don't like, and so they'll pull back. And absolutely, a guy can use that as an excuse. Like I said, you need to go back to the whole thing of making it about the relationship and not making it about the guy. That way the guy is trying to convince you that he's the right guy for you, instead of making it about you trying to get this guy, which is a really unhealthy place for you to be coming from. So CJ says, what if I want to give him space, but he says he don't need space? He want to chat all the time. LDR. Well, tell him that you need some space. That's what you need to do, is that you need to tell him that you need some space, and have some schedules, have some boundaries around what it is that you want, right? What you have to do is communicate your boundaries. What you do is you say, hey, I love talking to you. I really enjoy it. I love the time that we spend talking and communicating and video chatting, or whatever it is that you do in your LDR. And I need some space sometimes. I need some space, these times during the day and these times at night. And, I only want to talk, this so often, or whatever. And then ask him if he agrees to it. And then you can have a real conversation about it, right? So that's setting a boundary. That's what you need to do, is you need to start setting boundaries with him on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behaviors. Do. Irene says, what happens when he needs a lot of space, but when we do text, we text for hours and it's a bit confusing? Well, so we're talking about the rubber band effect here, Irene, when you're on, right? When you're off, you're off. And you need to decide, what kind of a relationship you have, going back to flipping the frame in your mind, right? Changing your mindset, shifting it from being about this man to being about the relationship. And so the coaching that I have for you is, if it was about this relationship and you want this certain kind of relationship, is this man creating that kind of environment? Are you communicating it? Are you communicating your standards, what you want, what you need? And then is this man going in that direction of taking you there? And so you need to figure that out, right? There shouldn't be anything confusing about this, right? When he's not on, he's off. And then when he's on, he's talking to you for hours. And so it sounds like he's there and then he's gone, right? And you need to decide whether that's something that works for you. You need to make sure that you're communicating your standards on what you want. You need to make sure that you're having a conversation with him about what he thinks about these things, right? What he thinks about relationships and couples who talk as much as you want to talk, and find out if that's something that he's interested in, or if because he might think that's crazy behavior. Right? So you need to find out. You need to talk to him and have conversations with him about this so that you can get an understanding of what his blueprint of what a relationship looks like. Here we go. Michelle says, I've been doing that, setting high standards. The man flat out told me, I like you even more. Men appreciate things more if they work for it. There you go. Michelle's doing it right. Good job, Michelle. I'm going to give you some air high fives here. Go for it. Psh. Good job. Kicking butt. Thudo says, great lesson. Thank you. You are welcome. Hazel says, I lean back, but he keeps coming on and off, so I stopped reacting to his behavior. Remember, Hazel, the 3 types of communication of a high-value woman. The 3 main types. 1 is setting standards. 2, setting boundaries. 3, walking away. Michelle says, something is different about you, Matthew. You seem super happy. I don't normally seem super happy, Michelle. Is that what's going on? I've been doing a lot of Tony Robbins stuff lately. And so I've been like, yeah, pumped up. Let's do it. Right? I don't know. All right. So what else do we have here? Doop, 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 doop. Wow. We have a lot of comments today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Boom, 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 boom. So Serby says, should I be honest or until he wants to be exclusive? I don't know what you're asking about. Okay. What advice do you have for a man that's not ready to commit and may be intimate with others after 3 months of dating? He says he's not dating, but my intuition reads otherwise. I communicated what I wanted, but didn't receive clarity. So with a guy that's not ready, right? So a guy who's not ready, but he may be intimate with others after 3 months of dating. So we're going back to the whole thing about shining the light, right? You shine the light and you say, this is what I want. Well, the man gets to decide whether he takes you there. And what they found, they've actually done research on this. And what they found is that men know around the 6 to 8 month mark, almost all men know what kind of a relationship they want with the woman that's in their lives. So up to the 3 month point, right? It takes about 3 months before people start really showing their true colors to you. And so you want to be careful up to that 3 month point that you're not getting too attached to him, not getting too involved with him, not making it all about him. Make sure you're still seeing other people. Make sure that you still have an abundance of options and an abundance of connection, because if you don't, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get attached to him. He's going to start showing some of his true colors. And then you're going to be like, is this really what I want? Is this really the person that I want? But if you're already attached and you're already all the way in, and he hasn't decided that you're the right person for him, that, all these different things, right? So basically, don't jump in the pool. The metaphor is don't jump in the pool before he's decided that he wants to get in with you. In other words, don't commit to him before he's committed to you. So if he says to you that he's not ready to commit, right, or that he doesn't want a commitment, just say, fine. How, do you know when you're going to want a commitment? Do you know when you'll be ready to have a commitment? Right. And most guys will know, right? They'll say, oh, it'll be, I've got this thing that's going on at work and I'm just not ready for it yet. Or, I'm just not sure about you or life or, what I want or any of that kind of stuff. Or he might say, I know it's going to be in 3 weeks. There's just this thing that I have to do. And after that, or, I've got to go and travel, or it could be like, it might be a few more years, I'm just out of a relationship and I'm not ready. Right. And so you want to ask him and just see what he has to say. And then what you want to do is you want to, because most times when people say this, what ends up happening is the guy gives this long time frame, right? That's somewhere between 3 months and 10 years. And so what you want to do is just pull back, right? Make sure that you're not getting too attached to him, not getting too involved with him, and pull back, do all the things that we're talking about with an abundance of options, an abundance of connection, and make sure that you're not getting attached to this guy and sitting around and waiting for a guy who's not committed to you, doesn't want a relationship with you necessarily, where you're just, waiting for this chance to have this thing happen with him, right? And so if he tells you that he's unsure, he doesn't really know, he doesn't know, when he's going to want that, and he doesn't know what he wants or any of that kind of stuff, right? If he starts acting flaky, insecure, unsure, doesn't know what he wants, any of that kind of stuff, what you do is you say, okay, great, no problem. Let me know when you figure yourself out and decide what you want. And if I'm still single, then maybe we can still talk about it, right? And then what you want to do is you want to give him the gift of missing you by pulling away and going out and dating other people and seeing other people and finding somebody that actually does want to move things towards the relationship that you want to move things towards. And if he comes back, which he might, right? I had a woman a couple of weeks ago who was in a very, very similar situation where the guy that she was seeing was pulling away. He was confused, right? He was confused. He was kind of pulling away sometimes and didn't know what he wanted and all that kind of stuff when she talked to him. And I gave her that exact thing to say to him. And he ended up leaving for about a week. And then he came back and he was like, you're the only one I want. I was being an idiot. Let's do this. I'm committed to making this happen. I don't want anybody else. You're it for me. Let's do this, right? And now they're in a committed relationship and they're talking about the future together and all these different things because because she knew she was awesome. He knew she was awesome, right? And she said, hey, I'm willing to walk away if you're not willing to be in this all the way. Right? Which is the situation you want to be in. If you want a committed relationship, if you want everything, the first thing that you need to do is you need to believe that you deserve it. You need to believe that you are worth it. You need to believe that you're somebody that a guy would want to commit himself to, somebody that he'd want to be with in the kind of relationship that you want to have. And when you come from that belief system, all of a sudden, these guys will start believing it as well, right? You'll start communicating that. And if they aren't willing to believe it, they'll end up leaving or you'll end up leaving, right? If they aren't willing to agree to that, if they're not willing to do that. Number two is you need to put yourself into a position of value where you have an abundance of options with men. You have an abundance of connection so that you're not relying completely on him to get this, right? And then the third thing is that you need to communicate your standards, your communicate in a high value way, which is your standards, your boundaries, and walking away if it isn't a situation that serves you, right? And once you come from that position, it's a lot easier to get into the kind of relationship that you want to have and not end up in a situation where because we have women in our community who came into our community and they had been seeing these guys in these uncommitted situations for years, right? In one case it was over a decade, right? Actually a couple cases we've had women that were seeing guys for over a decade where it wasn't committed. They thought maybe it was committed, but he wasn't. He was like, oh, no, we're just friends, just hooking up buddies and stuff, right? And you're only in kind of a 3-month kind of situation, but you want to make sure that you're getting yourself into the best situation that you can, that you're not getting attached to him, that you're not placing all your bets on things working out with him, and instead having him trying to compete for your time, your attention, and proving to you that you're the woman that he wants. And so yeah, I hope that answered your question. That was a full getting your money's worth right here. All right, so let's see. Deborah says, my guy owes me money and is giving me the silent treatment. What do I do? First thing that you do is realize that you made a big mistake by giving a guy money. The second thing that you do is never give money to anybody ever again in the future unless you never plan on, you don't care if you get it back or not, right? That's the only time you should ever give anybody money ever in your life, is if you don't care if you ever get it back. If you care about getting it back, don't ever give anybody money. And number 3, cut your loss and don't talk to them ever again, and move on with your life and create a life with somebody who doesn't need you to financially support them. That's the answer, Deborah. Tamara says, Tamara says, I want everyone to realize that I'm the finest in the land. My love and joy is not for sale. It's a gift. Well, there you go, Tamara. So Nicole says, hey, I walked and it's few days now. He only left one missed call. That's all. What could I do? Are you saying, Nicole, are you saying that you're ignoring men? My suggestion is that you never ignore men, right? We had some woman in the community yesterday that was talking. She's like, how long should I ignore this man for? Is a week long enough? I'm trying to lean back. Is a week long enough to ignore a man? I'm like, nowhere in anything about leaning back doesn't involve ignoring a man. It doesn't involve ignoring a man. The only time that you should ever ignore a man is if you never want to talk to him again. That's it. That's the one time you should ignore a man. Amy says, I'm a young widow and have tried so hard to find someone. Dated, but I always get rejected over a different girl or they lose interest. Is being a widow hopeless? I feel like it is. No, absolutely not, Amy. What you're doing right now is you're making a false association, right? You're taking this idea of I'm a widow, right? Which is your identity. You're wrapped in this identity of being a widow. And then you're saying being a widow makes my dating life hopeless, right? And those things are completely disconnected. What you need is a good system, Amy. And my suggestion is that you get mine. I'm a little bit biased about this. I'll admit I'm a little bit biased, but I think you should get my system. It's at theforeverwomanformula.com. It works great. We've got women that have gotten married as a result, women who are single and frustrated, felt like everything was hopeless, and they got my system, and now they're getting married. We have women who have turned their entire marriages around. We've had women who have gotten over their exes. We've had women that have gotten back together with their exes with this system right here. So you can check it out. You can get free access to it. You also get 14 free days of coaching from our amazing world-class coaches in our coaching forum. So you should definitely go check that out. CJ says, Matt doing his thing once again, our #1 relationship coach. Well, I appreciate that, CJ. I appreciate that. Tiffany says, abundance, yes, great tactic. Yeah, what you want is you want to be in a world of abundance, right? So if you're it's all about one man, you're in a scarcity mindset and you're trying to get him to do things. You got to force him to do things. You got to make him do things. And if he doesn't do things, then it can be devastating to you because it's this one guy and I got to make this one guy love me, right? And so what you want is to get rid of that and instead go to abundance, because abundance is like flowing through life and wonderful and amazing and great. It's graceful and there's men everywhere. Oh, he's not doing what I want. I don't even notice because I've got abundance of all of these people and it's wonderful, right? And so you're frolicking through the fields in abundance, and that's what you want. You want abundance. You don't want scarcity. Feifei says, how to communicate with my boyfriend after a vicious argument. He is fed up with me and angry because I was asking for help with my jealousy and being vulnerable. Well, you need to tell us a little bit more about what's going on there, Feifei. But what you need to do is you need to make him feel heard. If you want him to get rid of his anger, what you need to do is make him feel heard, right? Because usually what happens, what makes somebody feel angry is they feel like they're out of control, or they feel helpless, or they feel like there's some kind of weird situation and they can't do anything about it, right? And the way to diffuse anger is just to let it wash over you, right? So let him talk and say all of these things and just be like, yeah, instead of attacking back or trying to change it or you don't understand me or any of that kind of stuff, what you instead do is just go, okay, yeah, I see how you feel. Tell me more about that. Like, what else are you feeling there? Like, oh, I didn't see it from that way before, and just trying to get into their world as much as you possibly can. Because if you can get into their world as much as possible, it'll diffuse it, right? They'll like let go of that. And then you can, have a real conversation after that. Do. So Jennifer says, my man said he loved me and I gave him space to digest everything. Haha, he's already contacted me. We all need space to process things, and love isn't constricting or controlling, it's freedom. Exactly, Jennifer. You got it. You got it, Jennifer. Love is not constricting. It's not controlling. It's not forcing. It's not manipulating. It's not cajoling. It's not any more adjectives that you want to come up with for the word force or manipulate. Instead, it's freedom, right? And the idea is like the cat, right? The cat metaphor. You want him to go away and come back, right? If you try to force him and chase him and put him in a cage, he's just going to be whine and cry and want to run away from you as much as possible. But if you let him do what he's going to do and he comes over, then you can pet him and he'll love you. That's what you want to do. Bing, bing. Chrissy says, I have a question unrelated to the topic. My boyfriend has always been pretty nice, but lately has been overly nice. Am I wrong to suspect him of cheating if he's never acted like this before? Well, my question, Chrissy, to you is why would you immediately go to cheating? Right? So he's been really nice. He must be cheating, right? There's a lot of, and so the question might be for you first is I don't know, right? Do you have a pattern of dating men who cheat on you? Right? Is there reasons why you might suspect a guy? So if you have a pattern of dating men who have cheated on you and you've been with guys who cheat on you a lot, then one of the first things that you need to do is take some space for yourself and change the way that you think about yourself. Because usually most people live in patterns, right? We all live in patterns. Everything's a pattern, right? We do the same things every day. We get into the same types of relationships unless we make significant changes within ourselves, right? And so a lot of what we do is based on past things that we've done before in our life. It doesn't have to be that way, but for most people it is. And so if you have been dating men who cheat on you often, or maybe you've dated a guy who's cheated on you in the past, what you need to do is some healing work, right? Because what ended up happening probably is that a guy cheated on you and then you made it mean some certain things about yourself, about life, about the world, about men. And so what you need to do is figure out, what those things are, bring those things to the surface and then start questioning whether those things are actually true or not. That way you don't end up continuing the pattern of getting into situations where you're hurt, abused, cheated on, or whatever kind of situations you're in, right? That's the way to break that pattern. You have to believe that you're deserving of something more, of something greater. Otherwise, what you'll see is that pattern happen in other guys, and then you'll feel comfortable around that pattern and you'll feel attracted to it. And so you need to break the pattern. And so that's if it's going on with you. You haven't told me anything. I mean, being overly nice, it could mean he's high, right? Like there's a lot of reasons people could be overly nice. And so, I mean, the idea of him cheating on you, I mean, unless you have some kind of evidence from the past or, you have a pattern of doing this. And so you keep on ending up with guys who are cheaters. And so that's your pattern. Unless you have something like that going on, there's no reason that I would feel like, it would give me any cause to believe that he was cheating on you. Michelle says you attract what you radiate. You attract what you feel. You attract what you feel. You feel what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you receive. That's what I like to say. But yeah, I mean, if you're in this, right, and you're in a situation, you're not sure what to do, and you want the absolute best strategies that you can possibly have to get into the relationship that you want to have, here's my suggestion. We've had women that have completely changed things around for themselves, and they did it using my patent formula, right? And there's 3 steps to it. You need to believe in your value, you need to position yourself in value, and you need to communicate your value. And that's really how you make sure that you get into the best possible situation you can. So thank you everybody for being with us today. I really appreciate everybody being here. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be serving you. It's really my whole kind of mission in life is to serve you to the highest capacity that I possibly can. So thank you so much for being in here. Thank you for trusting me on your journey to attracting the man in the relationship that you want to have. And so everybody, thank you so much. And I will speak with you again soon. And always remember, you are worth it. Take care and see you all in the next.